But some of them stand out.
Do you want something to drink?
I'd love a water, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So, Mark, you're here with three movie Never Let Me Go with three of the hottest young actors around. Did you have to like stalk them to get them to be in your movie? Was this like something they were stalking you to be in this movie?
I think there was a bit of mutual stalking. I think because it's people love this book and they have a very strong connection to this novel. And Alex Garland wrote such a good adaptation, a faithful adaptation, that it was, I think it was a hot script for actors.
Alex Garland, is he best known for writing The Beach?
Well, he wrote The Beach in 28 Days Later and the script for Sunshine. But yeah, he's written several great novels, The Tesseract and Coma. But it's a good script, so young actors were after it, I think.
So how did you end up filming this picture? I mean, it is, one of the most distinguished novels of the last 10 years. I'm sure a lot of people were probably after it. How did you get attached?
Well, I mean, I pursued it, and I made 1 Hour Photo for Fox Searchlight, so I had a really great relationship with Peter Rice. And, Peter called me one day and said, are you still interested in Never Let Me Go? I called them, and there was a director attached very early, so I missed the chance. And then that director, I guess, didn't work out. And Peter called and said, are you still interested? And I said, you bet I am, yeah. I love the book.
And what was interesting, I mean, one of the things before I saw this movie, people said, I didn't know it was going to be so depressing.
Well, I hope it's not depressing. I hope it's cathartic. I think it's a sad and beautiful story. I don't find it depressing. I find it very moving. And I think it inspires people. The people that connect with it seem to connect with it deeply. I think it inspires them. I've had people say, I called my dad because I hadn't spoken to him in 3 months and I just told him I loved him. I mean, it makes you feel, the preciousness of how little time we have and how to spend it wisely. And I mean, it's a moving idea. I don't find it depressing.
I mean, it's a science fiction story set in a time in the past, isn't it?
It's an alternate history, and I think everyone feels like the science fiction, it's not a science fiction film, and if people come to see a science fiction film, they might be disappointed. It's really it's a love story, and the science fiction kind of patina of it is a parable. It's like a metaphor to get at these, I think these deeper things that Ishiguro was writing about, which is love and friendship, and in the face of the fact that we're all here for a very limited time, and no one can escape that, really.
A couple questions.
Yeah.
First of all, have you signed up to be an organ donor?
That's a good question. I mean, I just renewed my driver's license.
Me too. Did it
And
for the first time.
and that question was like, and it scares me a little bit. So to be candid, I didn't tick that box, but I think about it a lot. And I also worry if there's some horrible bureaucracy that won't allow me to change my mind. But I don't know how I feel about that stuff, really. But I mean, that's a whole other conversation. And it isn't really what the film is about, I think. But
Well, I thought it seemed partly to be about people who have no choice in their lives. I felt, it's almost as if you were abducted as from India or from a lower caste or something, and locked into a room to become a sex worker, until you died or something. It just seemed, one of the things that it seemed to be about was the denial of freedom to people.
I think on a manifest level, in terms of story, that's probably true. I mean, I met some people that grew up in Soviet Russia and stuff, and they felt, that they understood why these characters felt like they had nowhere to go and they couldn't run. They were, the whole fabric of society was different, and it taught them that they couldn't really escape their fate. But it's a metaphor. The film is about us, and what Kazuo talks about when he talks so eloquently about the book and the film, far more eloquently than I do, is that he didn't want to make a film about the slaves, the brave slaves that rebel, or write a book about it. He feels like there's been other good stories on that topic. He said he's far more fascinated in the ways that we don't escape our fates, and that's in some ways makes up the body of his work, is an examination of these ideas, and that we don't tend to scream and rail against our fate. We tend to accept our fates, and but again, I feel like the film is a love story, and the film is about not coming to this idea of how can you come to the end of your life and not regret the choices that you made, and not regret how you lived it because we're here for such a brief amount of time. And all this science fiction stuff, it's very interesting to talk about. It's a metaphor for those ideas. It's not a science fiction film.
You know, when you talk about what this film is about, I agree with you. It is a love story. There are also some very distinguishable chords: love, friendship, betrayal. Betrayal factors greatly into it.
Yeah.
And I was pleased with how you let the story unfold, even though early on you know what's going to happen, but it's how you show it, the way you show it, and that you resisted the temptation to do some pretty conventional things. Were you restricted in any way?
Well, no, I mean, I was unrestricted in my attempts to be as faithful to that tone of the novel as I could. I mean, this was creatively the best experience I've ever had. I was very supported by the producers and by Kazuo and in my idea of the film, and I think I was hired to try to be faithful in tonally capturing the quality of Ishiguro's writing. And there's a drip feed mystery to how he and a patience to how he tells a story that I thought would be cinematic. It's more slowly paced than some films, but I don't mind it. I mean, it's a rhythm that I'm comfortable with.
And of your three young stars, who did you cast first?
Well, we needed to cast Kathy first, so we cast Carrie first. Peter Rice, we were having trouble finding Kathy, and we were the actress to play Kathy, and we were bumping up against a pretty hard start date because we needed to schedule the film so that the whole first act of the film, which is made up of these children, could be filmed during half term in London where they would be out of school. We had scenes where we needed like 150 kids. So we were coming up against a deadline. We didn't have our Kathy. And then Peter Rice, who was running the studio at the time, he saw Carrie in An Education at Sundance. And halfway through the movie, I found this out later, he texted me, "Hire the genius Mulligan." The 4-word text. And it was 4 words because the movie wasn't even over yet. And he said, "That's her, that's who." Everyone had that reaction to her. So we got a hold of a print, that Sundance print in London. We screened it. We were as blown away by her performance as the rest of the world, and went to meet Carrie in New York, Alon Reich and myself. And so then we finally had our Kathy, and then Keira Knightley's agent contacted us and said, "We understand Carrie's playing Kathy in the film." We said, "That's right." He said, "Well, have you cast Ruth yet?" And we said, "No." Well, Keira would be very interested in playing Ruth because she's desperate to work with Carrie. She thinks she's brilliant. So now we had Carrie Mulligan and Keira Knightley. And I always wanted to cast Andrew because I saw him in a film called Boy A, which is a fantastic film. That's his performance in that film is as astonishing as Carrie's was in An Education. It just wasn't as widely distributed.
Where he played a child killer?
He played a child killer who was finally paroled, and he has this secret that he killed a child, somewhat accidentally. He was sort of involved in the killing of a child. It's an incredible film. So in a similar way, he played a character who had lived this very institutionalized, sheltered existence and then is sort of out in the real world. And, it was just... I saw him in Lions for Lambs, and, he held his own with Robert Redford in one-on-one scenes, and then Boy A confirmed it for me. So those were the three. And then we had our Tommy, Kathy, and Ruth.
Oh, go ahead.